Hello, beautiful people of the internet. How are you doing today? My name is Jackie and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be my April reading wrap-up. In the month of April, I read 6 books for a total of 2,427 pages. That makes it my most successful reading month in terms of page count so far this year. However, my average rating is also the lowest that it has been so far this year. My average rating was 3.42 stars out of 5. There were some winners this month, but I also had my first 1 star of the year, I believe. So let's just get right into the reviews. First, I finished reading an instance of The Fingerpost by Anne Boleyn. I had started this in March for March Mystery Madness. This is a long historical mystery set in Restoration era Oxford, England. And it follows a group of characters who all get tangled up into a murder investigation in which a young woman is accused of killing her employer. We get the perspectives from 4 different men who are all somewhat related to this investigation, giving their perspectives as to what happened. All of them are unreliable in different ways, with their own personal biases and interpretations of what happened. Most, if not all of them, are also fairly unlikable. Credit to Anne Boleyn because the character of Jack, I hated him so much. He was meant to be a truly awful person, and it came through because I really hated this character. Forgot to mention, I gave this 3 stars. I just totally breezed past the rating. Honestly, this book reminded me a lot of The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco, which personally I was not a huge fan of, but if you like that book, I feel like you'll like an instance of The Fingerpost. I personally found it to be a more interesting version of The Name of the Rose. The Name of the Rose was a little bit too philosophical and slow for me, I think, but this book had a similar pace and tone, and it doesn't really involve philosophy as much, but there are a lot of intellectual characters and they have discussions on things like politics and medicine. So I feel like they're kind of comparable titles. I mean, I feel like this was a well-written book, but it was very long and it felt long to me. I think maybe this is just not my personal preference. There was also kind of like a religious element at the end. I guess I'll just call it a religious allegory, for lack of a better term. And I wasn't quite sure what to make of that, if it was supposed to be literal or like an unreliable account, because I saw people in the reviews taking it literally, and I'm not sure I fully understood. Honestly, I think this was a decent book. It just wasn't my specific taste, and that's why I didn't give it a higher rating. But I would definitely recommend this to people who think it sounds interesting. If you loved The Name of the Rose, I think you should pick this book up. After that, I read Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Sutanto. I gave this 4 stars. Our main character, Vera Wong, is an elderly lady who owns a failing tea shop in San Francisco. I think the book describes Vera as being 60 years old, but I felt like she read much older than that. I mean, my mom is 61 and she doesn't act like Vera at all. If the book had told me that Vera was 70 or 80, I would have believed it. That's a tangent. But Vera, she lives a pretty lonely life. You know, her son doesn't call her as much as she wants, and she's a widow. But one day, a dead body is discovered in her tea shop, and he has a flash drive in his hand. The police don't really take Vera seriously, and she ends up stealing the flash drive, taking it upon herself to investigate this man's demise. She meets different people who all come to the tea shop inquiring after the murder, and Vera suspects that one of these individuals might have killed him. To be honest, I'm struggling a little bit to remember all of the characters in this book, but I did think it was a really cute, kind of cozy mystery read. Jessie Q. Sutanto also did a really great job at describing different types of teas and different foods that Vera makes. They all sounded really appetizing. I know that's a weird thing to comment on, but she's very good at describing different teas and the different flavors and aromas they have. I personally don't have that sophisticated a palate for tea, but I really just enjoyed her descriptions of food and beverages. They were very evocative. This is a book that I would definitely recommend for those of you looking for a cute, cozy mystery and who love books about found families and people finding the things that they need in life from each other. Next, I filmed a vlog where I read 3 backlist thriller titles from my TBR. I will link that in the card, so go check it out. The first book that I read was The Hunting Party by Lucy Foley. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. This follows a group of friends. It is a multi-perspective novel. All of these old friends from college, I think they all went to Oxford, they are getting together to celebrate New Year's at a remote lodge in the Scottish Highlands. While they are there in this isolated setting, one of them will end up dead, and another member of the group is the one who murdered them. This book is told in a very similar style to Lucy Foley's novel The Guest List, and for a long time you don't even know who it was that was murdered. I've read 3 Lucy Foley books now, and I guess this one would be my second favorite because I really didn't care for The Paris Apartment, and The Guest List so far is my favorite. I thought this was an enjoyable book, and I was satisfied with how it ended, but I think the biggest problem for me is that some of the characters in this book didn't feel fully fleshed out. We follow this large group of characters, and some of the people who are on this trip, I didn't really feel like I got to know them. I feel like there were at least 3 or 4 characters who could have been cut out of the book entirely and not much would have changed. So then I read The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. Honestly, what did I rate this book? I really didn't know, because at the beginning I was thinking I was going to give it 5 stars, and then it took a sharp turn and I really didn't know what to make of it. Ultimately, I was feeling generous and I decided I was going to give this book 4 stars. I was just in a generous mood. And honestly, I feel like if I was going to rank all the Riley Sager books that I've read, this one would still be fairly high on the list because I really hated Lock Every Door. That's my least favorite book. I think it would be ahead of Final Girls because Final Girls was just pretty okay to me. And I would probably put it ahead of Survive the Night. I mean, maybe this is recency bias, but Survive the Night, I liked it fine at the time and now I don't really remember it that well. So I feel like it's beating out those 3 in my rankings. I don't know, maybe, well, no. I was gonna say maybe in a few years I will forget this book. But when you have a twist that batshit insane, I feel like you're not gonna forget it, right? Our main character in this book is an alcoholic actress named Casey Fletcher. She has left New York for her family's vacation home on Lake Green to get away from the public eye in basically a forced exile that her famous mother arranged, because Casey's drinking has been out of control since the death of her husband, Len, who died at the lake, I think, a year or 2 before the book starts. When she gets to the lake, Casey meets her new neighbors, Tom and Catherine, and she ends up befriending Catherine after she saves her from drowning. Now, Casey can see Tom and Catherine's house across the lake, and she starts spying on them in a very Rear Window fashion. She begins to suspect that their marriage is not as perfect as it seems, and when Catherine goes missing, Casey will do whatever she has to do to figure out the truth. This book started off so good, and I was really invested in what was happening. I was thinking maybe I was going to give it 5 stars, maybe it was going to be up there with my favorite Riley Sager books, But when we got to this big twist around, I think 70% into the book, I was just like, what is happening? Because it was so out of the realm of possibility that it never even crossed my mind that this was where the book was going. And personally, I don't really like it when mysteries or thrillers veer into territory like this, because I like it when the reader has all the information they need to properly figure out the mystery, but the author disguises the information so cleverly that they don't see it. I feel like nobody was gonna predict this is where the book was going, and if you tell me that you read this book and predicted where it was going, I'm not sure that I believe you. So honestly, this book is still very hard to form feelings around because I loved so much of it, and then the ending was just wild, but it was memorable. I will give it that. I actually gave the book to my mom and she's currently reading it. I'm not sure if she's gonna like it, but I just really want to discuss spoilers about this book with someone. So kudos to Riley Sager for that. I mean, he is a bit of a hit and miss author for me, but I keep reading his books because I do feel like they are very compulsively readable, and he definitely has that going for him. And now it's time for Jackie's 1-star review. Next, I read The Last Mrs Parrish by Liv Constantine. This was a very popular book like 5 or 6 years ago, and after reading it, I'm honestly struggling to understand why. Maybe it was just unique at the time, but I thought this book was not good. I thought it was not good. I gave it 1 star, and I was honestly angered by it. So this is, in theory, a domestic thriller, but honestly, I found the book very slow-paced and boring, and I really wasn't that surprised by anything that happened. Maybe if you read this book when it came out, you would have been surprised, but I feel like domestic thrillers are a little bit played out at this point, and it's hard for me to find one that genuinely surprises me. So we're following Amber Patterson, and Amber Patterson is a con woman, a schemer, who has come to this very wealthy community called Bishop's Harbor. I think that's what it's called. I don't know. And she attempts to ingratiate herself with Jackson and Daphne Parrish. She befriends Daphne by making up lies about her background and basically manufactures a friendship with Daphne because Amber wants to marry Jackson. She wants to drive a wedge in their marriage and marry Jackson herself so that she can enjoy the high life that she feels like is owed to her. Now, why she decided to target a married man when she could have found a rich guy who doesn't already have a wife and married him, I don't know. Like, why would you go after someone who's already married, seemingly happily married, because that's just adding another step to your scheme? But I digress. I don't understand why this was her plan. It doesn't make sense to me. Personally, I found this book very boring, honestly, and I honestly think that some of the content in this book is, personally, I would consider it offensive. The authors have some, let's just say, dicey things to say about atheism, abortion, and domestic violence, which I did not love. Obviously, not everybody has to share my opinions. That's fine, but I think that this book contributed to some pretty harmful narratives surrounding those issues, which I did not appreciate. So considering all of that and the fact that I wasn't interested in what was happening, I gave this book 1 star. You can go watch my thriller vlog to hear me rant about it. And lastly, I read The Creation of Anne Boleyn, a new look at England's most notorious queen. This is by Susan Bordeaux, and I ended up giving this 5 stars. Honestly, I think it's easier for nonfiction books to get 5 stars from me because I think with fiction books, there are a lot of different things that go into my enjoyment, but I pick up nonfiction books wanting to learn about a certain topic while being entertained, and as long as the author successfully does that, I'm perfectly satisfied. So that's just a little tangent about my 5-star ratings. Yeah. Now, in case you're new around here, you should know that I love Anne Boleyn. She is one of my favorite historical figures, and I was really intrigued by this book that's all about her and how she's been perceived throughout time. There are a lot of different people who have preconceived notions about Anne Boleyn. There are some people who think she's so cool and awesome and she never did anything wrong in her life ever, and there are people who think she's a deformed witch and she was responsible for this, that, and the other, and she took advantage of Henry VIII with her looks, blah, blah, blah. And in this book, Susan Bordeaux is really trying to use the limited information we have to get to the heart of who Anne was, examining different sources and talking about how their descriptions of her were biased and therefore cannot be taken at face value. She also specifically calls out popular historians like David Starkey or Alison Weir, talking about how they use these very biased sources to prove their own preconceived notions, and shots fired, honestly. Obviously, it's good that popular historians like Alison Weir are getting people into history, but you can't believe everything they say. So what we're getting in this book is both Anne's life story, but also a deep dive into her character and how public perception of her has changed with society's changing values and the popular culture of the time. There was actually a very interesting section where she included quotes from historical figures like Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, Jonathan Swift, where they were talking about what they thought of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII. And that was quite amusing to me. I took a screenshot of whatever Jonathan Swift said about Henry VIII. I will put it on the screen because I can't remember it right now, but I found it really funny. The reason that I love Anne Boleyn so much is because when I was a kid in elementary school, I would go to the school library and I would pick up dozens of historical fiction books on the tutors. And a lot of those books, Anne was depicted as a very one-dimensional, evil seductress. You know, she set out to get Henry. She ruined his relationship with his daughter Mary. She was a witch. She had a 6th finger. No, she actually did not. And just all these things about her. And so then when I started getting older and I was able to do some more research, I realized, wait, this woman has been really unfairly treated. These things about her are not true, or at the very least, they're more morally gray than that. Anne was definitely not a perfect person. She had character flaws, but she was also very headstrong and intelligent, and she deserved better than what happened to her. That's why she's one of my favorite historical figures. I just find her eternally fascinating. So everyone, those are all the books that I read in April. I hope you enjoyed this video. Do let me know in the comment section what you read in the month of April. And if you're still here watching, why don't you leave a crown emoji in the comments section. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more from me. I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. My social media links are down below. If you want to follow me on Tumblr, Instagram, or be my friend on Goodreads, I think that about does it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an immaculate rest of your day. Bye, and I'll see you next time.